Okay, hi everyone. I am Colleen Cullen, and I am the Genealogy and Community History Librarian at the Aurora Public Library. We are hosting a program tonight called Finding Your Hispanic Ancestry. This session at 6 p.m. is going to be presented in English. And then we have another session, the same exact program at 7 p.m. that will be presented in Spanish. We have Debbie Gertler with Family Search here with us tonight. Thank you so much for being here, Debbie. Before I hand it over to you, I just want to mention that the library does have monthly genealogy assistance, and it's walk-in. It's at each location, and it is the second full week of the month. So that's at Santori on Monday mornings. It is at West on Tuesday afternoons and Eola on Thursday evenings. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Debbie. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Colleen. So my name is Debbie Gertler. As she mentioned, I work for Family Search at the Family History Library, and I'm happy to be here with you this evening and thankful for the invitation. I am going to turn off my camera so that I can preserve some bandwidth and we'll get underway. So tonight we're talking about finding your Hispanic ancestors, and we're going to talk a little bit about proper research methodology. We're going to go through the research steps. We're going to talk about how to get clues from the records, and then I'm going to give you some search tips and tactics which should help you to be more successful in your research. So we're going to start. Let's imagine you're sitting at your computer, your ancestors from Mexico, and you find a record and you're like, well, what do I do next? So we're just going to kind of run, this whole lesson is going to run like a case study following this one particular family from Mexico. And now, just because it's Mexico, the same principles apply. The records might be a little bit different, but you're going to apply the same types of strategies. So this is the 1930 census. It covers most of Mexico. There are a few gaps. And I find this record, and my ancestor, let's say, for hypothetical purposes, is Jesus Juarez. She's a female. She's about 12 years old in 1930, and she's listed in the census in the household with Celso Juarez and Isabel Macias, and these are probably her parents, although it doesn't give exact relationships in the census, and it gives their ages and their occupations and which state they say they were born in Mexico. So this is a full screenshot of the census of Mexico. It's a very great place to start if you're looking for ancestors from Mexico, especially if they lived in most of the states. The only place that it's not good for is if your ancestors lived in Mexico City in the Distrito Federal, because that part of the 1930 census has been lost. But it's for everywhere else, it's a good place to pinpoint where your ancestors might have lived in Mexico. And the information that you can find in there generally is the name of the person, their age, and their sex. And then we have several columns for marital status. There's single, married civilly, so that means civil registration, married by the church, meaning the Catholic Church. We have unión libre, which is a common law marriage. They weren't officially married anywhere, but they lived together. And then we have widowed and divorced. And then you have information about the birth state. So once you find that first record, you're going to want to record your findings. I don't know if you use a genealogy program or if you use an online tree or whatever, just make a note of your source. And if you do use Family Search, which by the way is free, you just create an account and you can start building your tree right there. You can attach your sources right into Family Tree. Or if you use a program like Roots Magic or Ancestral Quest or Family Tree Maker, you can add it to your own database. Your next thing you're going to want to do is analyze the information that you've found and see what kind of clues it'll provide you, and then set your next research goal. So let's take a look at our clues here. So we know in the census they were living in Aposol in Zacatecas. We know that Celso is about 44, and they were married by the church, and it says he's a businessman born in the state of Zacatecas. As for Isabel, she is about 44 as well, and also, because they're spouses, they were married in the church and from the state of Zacatecas. And the daughter, Jesus, which Jesus can be male or female, is age 12 and not married yet. So let's take a look at our next steps. What are our next possibilities? We could look for the birth or the baptism record of the daughter Jesus, and based on what we found in the census, she's probably born about 1918. We could also look for the marriage record of her parents, Celso and Isabel, when probably before 1918, because that's when the daughter was born. Where? Not exactly sure. I would guess in the state of Zacatecas, maybe Aposol, because that's where they were, but maybe not. So as I look at these two goals, I think my best chance for success is maybe to try searching for the birth record of the daughter, because I have her name and I know about when she's born, and they're in Aposol. So step one, let's try to search for the daughter Jesus and see what kind of information that we can find. Now here I am on the homepage of FamilySearch.org. And to gain greater access to records, we recommend that you sign in with your Family Search account. And remember, it's free, anyone can have one. It'll give you more options for saving and attaching any records you find. You can build your tree there. And in our Family Search family tree, you can also add photos and stories and documents. It's a fun place to save your information and to collaborate with cousins, because our tree is designed to be universal, one tree for all mankind. So let's click on search now. And then we're going to have a little drop-down menu pop down. And then this is where you're going to go if you want to search records. So I'm going to click on records, and that's going to take me to this page where I have my search engine. And what I recommend that you do is you click on more options, because that will open up more fields to enter more information. And then you have the ability, you can add her name, Jesus Juarez, and you can add a birthplace and a year range. So we know from the census she was born in Zacatecas, and we know she's born sometime between 1915 and 1920. Granted, based on the census, it should be 1918, but I'd like to give myself a little year range in case it was off a little bit, depending on who gave the information to the census taker. The next step that I like to do is put in the limit by location. I want to look particularly in Mexico and only in the state of Zacatecas. So that's going to show me all the results from that particular area, because I don't want to see any from Chile or Colombia, because there's probably going to be multitudes of people with the name Jesus Juarez. So let's take a look at our results. And unfortunately, there's not anything really here that looks like it's her. So now what? What am I going to do? Well, you can go back and try some search variations. And I always have the motto that if you haven't searched 3 or 4 or 5 different ways, you haven't tried hard enough. So try some different variations. And let me show you one example of that. So I'm back here at the search engine, and this time I'm going to keep the daughter's name, Jesus, but I'm going to add in the names of her parents, Celso Juarez and Isabel Macias. Now keep in mind, in Mexico, if you're not aware, women do not change their name when they marry. They keep their maiden name. So it makes it much easier and much more funner to research them, because it's easier to find them. And then I'm going to again limit or restrict the record results to the country of Mexico and the state of Zacatecas. Click on search, and here's my results. And lo and behold, look at that first result there. I have M. Jesus Juarez, and probably the M stands for Maria. I have a marriage date and an approximate birth date, 1919, but look at the names of the parents, Celso and Maria Isabel Macias. I think I found a match. This looks like her. It's not her birth record, but it's going to give me more information about the family. Woohoo! Now, if I want to look at the actual record, I have a couple options here, and you should always look at the original record for more clues. So I can click on her name there and it'll pull up some information, but I can also click on the camera and look at the actual image. The icon that looks like a little piece of paper will bring up this screen, which is actually the indexed form of the information that came from the record. So here on the indexed information page, we have a little summary about the marriage. So we have the husband, Nicolas Sandoval Aro, and he's 22. So that gives him an estimated birth year of 1917. And we have his parents. And then we have Maria Jesus and her age at the time of marriage. So it gives her approximate birth year about 1919. And we have the parents, the wedding date, and the place. Now there's some other information here that you'll want to look at when you get to this page. Now here's my option to view the original document, and you're going to want to look at that because it may have some additional clues that they weren't able to index for the interest of time. On the right-hand side, we have similar records that match some of the same information in this record, and you may want to take a look at those to see what information is there, because that could be more records. It's kind of like our version of Ancestry, Shaky Leaf. So there's that information about Jesus. Now let's click on the marriage and take a look at that. So here, when I click on the image, it takes me directly to the page with the record, and I'm going to go ahead and blow that up a little bit so that you can see it, but it gives us more information about the groom and his parents, and also about the bride and her parents. I'm just gonna, that's the good stuff right here about Jesus is in this little green box. I'm going to show you a little transcription of that that's been translated. So her name was M. Jesus Juarez, and almost always when it has the M, that's for Maria. Every girl in Mexico was Maria, every boy was Jose, and then they had another name that they usually went by. It tells us she's single, she's 20 years old, she's a native and resident of this place, and this is Aposol. And that's great because that's where we found him in the census. And then it tells us she's the legitimate daughter of Celso, who's 53, and M. Isabel Macias, who's 52, and it says their occupations, and that they're Catholics and they're indigenous. So I've got a lot of good information in those records. So now what am I going to do? What can we do to advance that family line? Well, I could try to find her birth record, but I've got a lot of information about that. I could also try to find her parents' marriage, which parents' marriage will give me the names of their parents, so that will give me another generation. A birth record could possibly do that as well. So I need to decide what I want to do. But if I search by name and nothing comes up, I don't find anything, what do? Well, if they don't show up in my results when I search by name, that's when I want to go and browse the image collections. And I'm going to show you a couple ways to do that on Family Search that will help you. So there's two ways to access the browsable image collections. One is via the Family Search catalog, and the other is via Family Search images. So let's take a look at the catalog first. The Family Search catalog is like any library catalog. It's an open door to all of our collections. And there are various ways that you can search our catalog. The most popular one is by place, but you can also search by information that has the surname, the title of a book, or the name of the author of a book. You can also do by subject class, like vital records or military records. You can also do a keyword search, which is also very powerful. And for the keyword search, I often recommend, if you're searching for example, records in Spanish, do the keyword search in Spanish. You'll have greater success. You can also say, for instance, if you found an article and it has a call number, you can search by call number or film, fish, DGS number. You can also choose the level of availability that you want. And we also have some other catalogs to consider that if you're not finding it or you don't have access to it at home, you may want to check your local library, and we have some catalogs that you can use that as well. So when you're searching the catalog, here's a few tips. Be sure to check all the jurisdictional levels for a locality. So for a place like Aposol is the municipality and the parish. Zacatecas would be the state. Mexico would be the country. So you might want to search in all three of those jurisdictions just to see what else you can find. You can also do a keyword combination search. So you might want to put in the name of a place and then the type of records you're looking for. So maybe I'm doing Chile and I'm looking for passport. So I put in Chile, pasaportes. As I mentioned earlier, searching in languages is always great as well. Now, if you can't make it to Salt Lake City to access all of our collections, you can use WorldCat or Archive Grid to find materials that might be local to you there in Illinois or wherever you happen to be watching from. The other option that you have is to try our lookup service. So if you have the name and you think your ancestor is in a particular book, send us we have a form that you fill out from our website, and you can do the lookup service and ask us to take a look. And if it's there and we have the legal ability, there are no restrictions, we'll send you a copy of that record. So, all right, let's go back and see how we access the catalog. Again, I'm back on the Family Search homepage, and I've clicked on the search button up here, and this is my little menu that pops in. I'm going to choose catalog this time. When I do, that takes me to this search page for the catalog. And I mentioned WorldCat and Archive Grid. This is where you can search catalogs from other libraries, WorldCat from other libraries around the world. And some libraries have interlibrary loan. We do not loan out our books, but you may find one that will loan you the book you're looking for. And then we have Archive Grid, which connects to archival materials from around the world. So it's another place where you can search. On our search engine for our catalog, you can see we have all of these different ways that you can search. And for example, the default is to search by place, but if you wanted to search for surnames, you'd click on surnames and a field would drop open and you could put it in there, you could enter there, or titles or author, subject, keywords. Now, I mentioned availability earlier. It's kind of hard to explain without you actually seeing it. So if you want to search to see anything that we have, click on the Any button. If you want to search just what you can see online, choose Online. Or if you want to see just what you can see at your local Family History Center, you can choose that option as well. So let's do a search. And remember, Jesus and her family lived in Aposol. So I began to type in Aposol, and as I do, the catalog offers me some suggestions, and I just choose the one that matches the area that I need. In our catalog, the entries are typically listed from largest jurisdiction, country, state, and city to smallest. So keep that in mind. You don't have to type them in this way. I didn't, but that's how you'll see them when they come up. So I click on this one that's in green, and then I click on search, and it takes me to this page that's all about records from Aposol. And you can see I have the census, I have some church records, and I have some civil registration. So let's take a look at church records, because we know that in the census, it said that Celso and Isabel were married in the church. So as I click on that, it opens up this option where I have a link here that I can click on to be taken to the actual, to a page that describes the records a little more fully. So I'm going to click on Registros Parroquiales, and it's going to take me to this page that's all about the different records. And I could click here and go right to the records, but we're not going to do that right now because I want to show you some things about our catalog. So as I scroll down the page, I can see the various collections that are available. And so this is baptisms, 1855 to 61, comma, 64 to 1880. That comma tells me that there's a little bit of a gap in those records. So if I'm looking in those years, I might have a hard time finding them. So these are the records. Now, if I wanted to look for the baptism for Jesus, I know she was born about 1918, 1919. So this is my collection. This is what I would go to. And I would click on the little camera icon to be able to look at the images. Now I'm going to flash up on the screen now a slide that explains what these icons mean in the catalog, because it's important for you to know that. If it has the magnifying glass, that means at least one record from that collection has been indexed, and you can click on that magnifying glass icon and the search engine will open up and you can search specifically in that collection. If the camera icon is there, that tells me that those records have been digitized, they're online, and all I have to do is click on the camera and view the images. And we'll do that in just a few minutes. If it has the key on it, the camera with the key, that means some of those records may have some additional restrictions. Sometimes it's just as simple as making sure you're logged in with your Family Search account. Other times you might need to be in one of our family history centers. So click on the icon and it will tell you what the restrictions are. The last one, the microfilm roll icon. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, all of our microfilm has been digitized, but not all of it may be fully viewable online. That's because when these records were microfilmed years ago, nobody had ever heard of the internet. when the contracts were made, that wasn't part of the contract. So in many cases, they've had to go back and contact the archives and the repositories and say, hey, these are digitized now. Is it okay if we put them online, and just kind of renegotiate the contract? So keep that in mind. If you come across a microfilm roll, it may be because we haven't had a chance to go through the legal process to actually allow us to put them online. Sometimes these restrictions also come from the archives themselves. They say, yeah, you can have them, you can make copies, but we only want people to see it in a family history center, or we only want people to see it who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, for whom Family Search is one of the church is one of our is our, I don't know how you want to call it, our corporate entity. They're the ones that sponsor us. So we have to abide by those rules in order to have the records. All right, let's go back to the catalog entry and let's take a look again at those baptisms. So we're going to click on that little camera icon. You notice it doesn't have the magnifying glass, so that means I can't search by name. And then I'm going to be taken to this page where I can view. These are the digitized images from the microfilm, so you don't have to sit in front of the microfilm reader and crank the machine. And then let's talk a little bit about the tools that you can use as you browse through here. So over here on the left-hand side, we have to enlarge and to reduce. We have the thumbnails, and this is the thumbnail view that we're in right now. And this little box allows you to go full screen. We also have the ability to advance the images. So you can go one by one, forward and backward, or you can enter in a number. You can jump 200 or 300 images at a time if you need to. Over on the right-hand side, you have the ability to print and to download, and then there's some other tools that allow you to turn the image to the left, to adjust the image to make it brighter or darker, adjust the contrast, and then you can also change it, where most of the time it's black print on white paper. You can change it to white print on black paper if that's easier for you to see. Now, as far as the print option goes, I do not recommend that you use it. It doesn't work very well. Yes, I work for Family Search, but it doesn't work well. What I recommend that you do is download it and then print it from the download. The print option here it's not good. So anyways, all right. As you go into these, usually the first frame in the set is the microfilm number. So you can use that to make sure that you're in the right film. And when you're seeing an image that doesn't have, or index information that doesn't have the image attached, you can search by microfilm and go in and see if you can find that image. So as we navigate through the images, there's where I can put in the different numbers, and you can just jump ahead. So here I've jumped ahead to image 300. So I just took a guess about when it might be, because I thought, well, maybe about in the middle, based on the range of dates that were in there. And so as I go through, I look here, oh, this is the 2nd of October, 1917. So I'm pretty close, because I want to start looking in 1918 and to see if I can find her birth. As you're looking through these images, sometimes you will find that these books have indexes. And so, which is great because it helps you to find a record quicker. What you have to figure out is if this number is the certificate number or if it's the page number. So usually if you see among these and it has like a V after it, that's probably a page number, because that means verso, or the backside of a page. Or if it's just a plain number, then you're just going to have to figure out that might be the certificate number. And you can see those as you go through the record. So here we are. We started at 300, remember, browsing through the images, and after 27 images, sure enough, I found a match. So it says Maria Jesus Juarez. Let me blow that up for you so you can see it. So here is the record itself, and I have record number. If she was in the index, she might be under 1020, or she might be under 472, depending on how they did the index. Let's pull out the information so that you can see what's there, and it's a treasure. So you've got the baptism date, the 6th of May, 1918, and then you've got her actual birth date. So the 3rd of the current month at 1 a.m., even down to the time, gives us the names of her parents, tells us she's a legitimate daughter, meaning the couple was married, And in many countries in Latin America, you get the grandparents. So 3 generations in one record. So Celso's parents are Jose Maria Juarez and Bruna Boroel, and Isabel's parents are Remigio Macias and Viviana Luna. So great record. And now I have a lot of information to add to my database, and I can start extending my family tree and doing other searches. Now let's jump in and talk a little bit about the other option for searching for images is family search images. So what is it and why do you want to use it? So in family search right now, we have cameras all around the world capturing images in records and archives and repositories. And as those newly captured images come in to family search to be processed, the first place they go is in images. So places where they have cameras right now, like for instance, I know there's cameras in Colombia and Peru. These records don't necessarily show up in the catalog just yet, but they're viewable. So you could go to images and take a look and see what's there. They also have digital images of virtually every microfilm that's been digitized. It's already in the catalog. And why would you use images instead of the catalog? Because it offers some better image viewer options. You can blow the images up much larger, and you can also rotate to the right and to the left. But just remember the same viewing restrictions apply that for these particular records as well. So here's some tips and techniques that you might want to use when using family search images. It's done primarily, well, exclusively searching by locality, but you can apply filters by date and by record type, and I'm going to show you some examples. And then, as I mentioned, it has the enhanced image viewer tools, and then you can also do a map search. So if you find that the family wasn't in Apasol, you can go to the map and look and see, well, which towns are nearby, and maybe start your searches in there, because back then people didn't move around a lot. They didn't go too far from home when they moved on. Now I'm back on the family search homepage, and I'm going to click on search again, and this time I'm going to go to images, and that's going to take me here to the images homepage. And this is your search engine, but I want to show you some other things at the bottom here. Be sure and read through this. So this has tells you a little bit about all of the documents the images that family search currently has. And our goal is to capture as many of the world's images as we can and put them available online freely for all to find their families, because we're all about families and we think that everybody should be able to make that connection. Here's some information. Why isn't there a name field? Well, this is images. So the images, this is for browsing those images, and most of these records, a lot of the records haven't been indexed, so it's important to go through these images page by page. And then it gives you a little hints about which places should I search for. So start with where your ancestor lived, and then try some related places. And so I'm going to show you those as we go through these examples. All right, so I'm back here at the search engine, and I'm going to put in Apasol, Zacatecas, Mexico. I can just put in Apasol, and then it'll be just like the catalog. It'll start offering me options, and I can choose the one I want. So I'm going to take that first one, and that brings me up my results. I have 288 results. So these are all records for Apasol. That's a ton to look for. So I want to use some filters so I can narrow down what I'm looking for. So I can use the sidebar over here on the right to filter by date and by event, and then you can use the map to see nearby locations. So let me show you how that works. First, if I want to select a date range, I'm going to blow this up over here on the right so you can see it. I can type in a date, and then as you're typing it in, choose which option down here matches. And it doesn't have to be 1 year. You could put 1918-1922, and it would do that as well, and it'd offer you that option. So once I've chosen what it suggests, then I'm ready to go down and choose my life event. And again, that's over here on the right-hand side. So I'll blow that up. And in this case, my available options are marriage, death, birth, religious, and residence. Residence most likely being census. So I'm going to choose marriages. So now you can see I've got that here. Now, in order for it's still at 288. In order for the changes to take place, I need to click on update so that it will filter my results by marriages in 1918. So once I've done that, I now have 3 results. So it's not as bad to look through. And look, I have 149 images here. And this tells me it covers 1916 to 1920. Here are some marriage records. There's only 22 images. Great, that won't be too hard. Here's some marriage investigation files, 907 images. That's a little much, but if I have a rough idea of a date, I can jump ahead until I get to the date that I'm looking for. Now, if they're not found in the parish, but you're pretty sure they lived in the area, so you can click on the map and to see what other towns are nearby. So as I click on the map, it brings up, here's the map, here's Apasol. You might want to take out some pencil and paper and write down the names of the nearby towns. So you can see if they weren't in Apasol, maybe they were in Xuxipila or Remolino or Nochislan, and you might try to redo your search looking for one of those towns. Now you can also click on Zacatecas up here to see all the towns in that state which have records for the same type and for the same date, because my filters are still applied here. So let's do that. And you can see all of these places in Zacatecas, and you can zoom in and out on this if you want. These are all the towns which have records that correspond to the filters that were applied. Now I can click on View Result to see the full list of these results for the state of Zacatecas. And here is my list. There's 273. Now, if I want to search for those nearby towns, over here on the right, I can click on Show All 45, and then I can select that town from the list. Or you can simply go back to the search page, the main search page, and put in the name of that town as well. But that's how you use the images. Now let's talk about our next steps. So you're going to want to write down what you found, and then you're going to set a new goal. So do I want to find Jesus's civil registration birth record? Do I want to search for the marriage of Celso and Maria? I could do that. I have their names and I have the names of their parents. I could also do a search for the paternal grandparents because I have both of their names. The problem that I don't really have is good dates to begin my search. So I'm going to choose to search for the marriage. I know that Jesus was born in May of 1918, and she was their only child. So, and then Jesus and Isabel were born about 1886 based on the information for the census. So now the question is, when should I begin my search for the marriage, and where should I look? Now, she's born in 1918, so I always recommend that you begin with the known birth of the oldest child. So I would start in 1918. I wouldn't go back 9 months because our ancestors were human and she might have been on the way when they were married. As long as they were married by the time she was born, she was still considered legitimate. So start with 1918 in May and work your way backwards. And again, just keep an open mind that sometimes we've seen them marry and have the child a week later. So that's why I always recommend start with the known birth date or the known birth year of the oldest child. Even though we don't know for sure if she's the oldest child, it just seems like she might be. So our next step is to find that marriage for Celso and Isabel. And first thing that I recommend that you do, especially in Mexico, because so much has been indexed, is to search using the name of the bride and groom. You can also add a marriage year range, 1910 to 1920, because Jesus was born in 1918. And you can also apply those limits of the country of Mexico and the state of Zacatecas. Unfortunately, when I tried that, I didn't have any luck. So I can check the catalog and see what's available. So what I'm going to do is search by locality, see what's available, see what's been indexed, and then I'm going to choose the right record type and date range and do a little bit of searching in the images again. So as we go back to familysearch.org, remember I'm clicking on search and then catalog, and that's going to take me to the catalog page where once again I'm going to put in Apasol, and choose this option for Aposol, and then I'm going to click on search, and that's going to take me again to the records that are available. So let's see what's available. Let's open up the church records and the civil registration. So this is the time period for the entire collection. It doesn't mean I have births to 1952, and it doesn't mean I have deaths beginning in 1855, but the earliest record in this collection is 1855. It's most likely a baptism. And the latest record is 1952, and that's most likely a death record. The same thing applies down here, 1869 to 1999. This later date is most likely death records. So let's take a look at civil registration first. And I know that a lot of that has been indexed. So let's click on civil registration, and let's take a look at what's available. Now, again, we think they married about 1918 or a little bit earlier. As I look at marriages, this would be my best option, but look, there's that comma. There's a gap between 1913 and 1918. And yes, these are indexed, so I could search by index, but I think their marriage took place in this gap. So let's go back and take a look at the catalog again, and let's try the church records. So when you have options, try them both. So let's click on the parish records and see what's available. And here we have the years and what's available. So if I want to start in 1918 and go back, I think I'm going to start here first. And I can click on the camera to go see the images. What I recommend is when you get to the image viewer, because it ends in 1918, maybe start at the very end. But first, before you start browsing through all of these images, look to see if there are any indexes among these books that have been digitized. So as you look through the thumbnails, sometimes you can see, oh, wait, that looks different. That looks like an index. I'm going to start there, and it's about in the middle, a little bit past the middle, so that's probably the right time period. Let's take a look and see what we can find. And sure enough, and just a word to the wise, in this case, the index is by the first name of the groom. Sometimes you get it by the last name. Sometimes all the people whose last names begin with A are grouped together and not necessarily in alphabetical order. So just be aware, make sure you look through the index and understand how it's organized. So here I have Celso Juarez and Maria, or M, Isabel Macias, and I have this 174V. Now you remember that I told you that the V probably is my hint that that's a page number, because V means verso, which means the back side of the page. So the front side of the page is 174. You flip the page over, the back side is 174V. So let's go ahead and jump to 174V. And as I go through the images, I can see, oh, here's 175. So this is 174V. And as I go down, and there's your 175. And remember, that doesn't correspond to the image number. So you'll see I'm page 175, but I'm image 596. Don't let that throw you off. So here is where the record starts. This is actually a marriage information file, and it has a lot of good information in it. And it tells me this. The date is the 13th of November, 1915. It tells me Celso is 34, so that calculates to a birth year of about 1881. Originario de, that means he's originally from Nochislan. Remember when we looked at the map, Nochislan wasn't too far. And then it tells me he's a vecino de, which means he's a resident of this place for about 28 years. So he obviously moved here with his family as a child. And then it tells us he's the legitimate son of Jose Maria Juarez and Bruna Boruel, and that's perfect because that matches what we saw in the baptism record. So I know I have the right marriage and I have the right couple. And then I have information here about Isabel. She's 33. That calculates to a birth date of about 1882. And she's a native originally from and resident of Vecina de este lugar, meaning Aposol, because remember, we're in Aposol. And then it tells us that she's the legitimate daughter of Remigio Macias, who is deceased, and Bibiana Luna, who is her mother. So generally in a marriage information file, you get usually 2 images, sometimes 3 whole pages, maybe more. What's included is the petition to marry, parental consent for the bride or the groom, especially if they're underage, declarations by the bride and groom stating their ability to marry, declarations by the witnesses who know the bride and groom that state their ability to marry. They say, oh yeah, I know them. They're both single, they're free to marry. And then at the end, you usually find a marriage certificate as well. And then, so what are our next steps based on the information that we found? And you're going to want to go from what you know to what you don't know. Always have a good, solid information so that when you go to look for cells, so you can know where to look and how you're going to recognize them when you find them. So if I want to look for their birth or their baptism, where do I look? Well, obviously for Celso, the marriage said he was from Nocislan. So I'm going to look in Nocislan and I'm going to base it on the date that of his age in the marriage, because the marriage record is probably filled out by information personally given by him. So it's probably going to be a little bit more accurate than perhaps the census. And then if I want to do the same for Isabel, I can look for, I know she's from Apasol and I know her age, so I'm going to look in Apasol in the birth year that was calculated from the marriage record. I could also search for the marriage of their parents. I would assume probably that Celso's parents were married in Nocislan because that's where he was born. And I'd probably start there, but you can also do a name search and see if anything comes up. And then for Isabel, I would guess that her parents were probably from Apasol, and I would start there. Again, always remember to search by name first because a lot of records have been indexed. But if you don't find it, then try the searching through the images as I've shown you before. So here are some few research tips that will help you to be successful. Sorry, water break there. You want to begin with the most recent generation. Now, say you have a family tree and it's extended quite a ways, but it's not documented. It's not documented. It could throw your searches off by as many 5, 10, 20 years. So start by documenting everything. So work from the known, well-documented person towards the unknown. Don't go all the way to the end of your pedigree chart and start there. Start with the next to last person on the pedigree, not the last one, only if that one's documented well. If not, back up, keep backing up until you find some that are well documented. And it's always a good idea to look for all the members of the family because it may be that your direct line ancestor, his records don't have the information in them you need to push back. Well, maybe the record of his brother or his sister does. So look for all the members of the family and put them together. Always pay attention to the padrinos, which are the godparents, and the testigos, which are the witnesses, because there could be some clues there. It doesn't always give the relationship, but sometimes, well, here you can tell that the daughter is, the mother's last name is Sanchez, and one of the padrinos is a Sanchez. So it's possible that that is a relative. So keep that in mind as you're going through these records. And when you're searching for people of the same name, looking at who they use for padrinos and witnesses might clue you off as who belongs to which family. As you're doing your research, make sure you keep a good log or some good notes of what you've looked at. You can choose whatever method that works best for you. If you're like pencil and paper, great, use that if that's what works. If you prefer to use electronic, like a Dropbox or an Excel spreadsheet on your computer, whatever works best for you is what you need to use. There's no one right way to do it, but the most important thing is that you keep track of the information. And always remember to cite your sources. Write down where you find stuff so that if you need to, you can find it again and to prove that the information that you have is true. One of my colleagues showed me this one day and I loved it. Genealogy without sources is mythology. And we don't want to do mythology. We want to find our ancestors and do genealogy. And last but not least, always look at the original record because there's going to be more clues. And many of those birth and baptism records with the names of the grandparents, sometimes the grandparents' names are not indexed and you will not see them if you don't look at the record. Or it'll tell you that the person was originally from or a native of and the name of the place, and that information is not indexed. So you're going to miss out on a lot of clues if you don't take the time to read the record. So, all right, we are done. So if we have any questions, I know we are on Facebook as well, and I imagine you can put questions in the comments there, and then they can be relayed to us here on Zoom. So thank you.
Yes.
This has been fun.
Yes, thank you so much, Debbie. That was wonderful. And you are absolutely correct. If anyone has questions who's viewing on Facebook, feel free to drop them in the comments. While we are giving people a few minutes, I will just mention again that if you did want to kind of follow up on this and get some help starting this research on your family history, we do have help available at the library. It is monthly. It's the second full week of the month at each location. So our next upcoming dates are November 14th, 15th, and 17th.
And I'd like to add that the Family History Library also does consultation. We do them online via Zoom. So, and you just make an appointment when it's convenient for you. So if you want it, if you're really dying to get at it and it's not the second week of the month, you can set up an appointment with one of us and we can help you as well. And we do them in English and in Spanish. So if you speak Spanish,
I didn't know that. So, and how do you set that up, Debbie?
I'm just going to find the link and put it in the chat. So yeah, and we do them not just for Hispanic research, but we do them for all over the world. So you get stuck in Russia, we can do them. You get stuck in Germany, we can do them. So here is the link. And you can go in, read more about it, and set up an appointment.
Awesome.
Thank you
so much.
I'll give you the one to the lookup service as well, because some people like to, they see something in our catalog and they want to see it. So let me put that there, and then you're welcome to pass those on to any of your library patrons.
Thank you. I'll drop it on Facebook as well.
Perfect.
Okay. I don't see anything else coming through. I do want to remind folks that we will be continuing this party over on the Spanish Facebook page for the Aurora Public Library District. We're going to do the same program again in Spanish. So thank you so much, Debbie. We really appreciate you being here and sharing that great information.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll see you all again soon, hopefully.
Okay, bye.